Hello, and welcome to Saving People Queering Things, a supernatural podcast. We were previously known as Driver Picks the Podcast, and the episode you're about to listen to was recorded under that name. Though our name has changed as of season 3, our show hasn't changed that much. Our structure and theme-based discussions are the same, and we're so glad you're here. Now, let's get on the road. Hello, and welcome to Driver Picks the Podcast, the show where we talk about ghosts, road trips, and free will through every episode of the TV series Supernatural. First off today, we are going to have a little series recap, which was created with the help of a number of our season 1 hosts. The prompt that I gave each of our hosts was, what are some of the important moments from season 1 and what are some of your favorite moments from season 1? And so we're just going to get a smattering of what those moments and incidents were. These are in no particular order. You're going to hear from Jacob, Rennie, Hannah, and myself in this segment. What is an important moment from the season? Not your favorite moment, but like what is something you would put in as a like, this is an important moment from season 1, from the episodes that you saw. The like 4 or 5 random episodes that you saw.
The four episodes that I saw, and the only 4 episodes that I saw, because I did not watch on my own time because I ain't got time for that.
Fair.
I honestly can't think of something.
You were there when we first met Meg.
Yeah, she's a horny bitch. That's probably the most important thing I can think of.
Okay.
Like uncomfortably horny.
Yeah, which continues in the finale.
Yes, made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That was pretty important.
Yeah, it's an important character trait that we've gotten from Meg so far.
Yeah. I've talked a lot about Papa.
What are your impressions of?
I don't know. He could be a dick. He could be not a dick. My indication from your guys' talking that yes, he is a dick.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm kind of expecting him to continue in that role.
Yeah, that's fair. My second question is, what has been your favorite moment from this season? I watched
the Scarecrow one.
Yeah, you watched Scarecrow.
Yeah.
You watched The Benders.
Oh, yes.
You watched the first one with Meg, which one, I don't remember what it's called. You watched the first one with Meg. You watched Provenance with Sarah, the art dealer.
Yep.
And you've watched the finale. Those are your 5 episodes.
Okay.
What was your favorite of those 5 that you saw?
Probably The Benders.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I like that one the most, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that episode is definitely my favorite. I like, you know what's my favorite? I like how much of an influence I have on you in this podcast.
That's fair.
The fact that I made you change significant
deaths to include all of the deaths.
All of the deaths.
Yeah, it was a good change.
Yeah.
It's sort of a cop-out to say that Sam choosing Dean in this episode might have been my favorite. It's what comes to mind, both because it's recent and because it's sort of a culmination of that sibling tension that I'm so fond of. Mm-hmm. The other thing that keeps coming to mind is I do just genuinely adore Faith. And I think that being so early in the season, now sitting on the finale, looking back, just the sort of, with John here now, missing a little bit the unexpected softness of the brothers with each other only.
Yeah, okay. So one important moment I think in season 1 is the episode Faith, where Dean is dying and Sam's trying to find a cure for him. And there's just a lot of discussion about death and family, loyalty, and like what it means to like love someone, I guess. And I guess like respecting their wishes versus doing what you think is best for them. And I think the discussion that was had during that episode of the podcast too was really like, I think we covered a lot of the big themes in the show are kind of recapped in that episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the concepts of, well, faith and belief, and who do you believe in and why, and who do Dean and Sam believe in. And we also get, Reapers for the first time in that episode. And yeah, the question of like worthiness, the questions of who survives and why, who gets chosen to survive. And we have the line spoken to Dean about, there's big plans for you, you have a purpose and it's not completed, kind of launching us into the rest of the season
and the show.
And the show.
That idea is revisited a lot about Dean having a purpose and him not necessarily always being okay with that. The important moment that I noticed in the finale this time around of watching it was when John is possessed and he's asking Sam to kill him because he wants to kill Yellow Eyes. And Sam can't do it. And Dean is lying on the floor pleading with him, please don't do it. Please don't do it. Because the whole argument during that episode is Sam and John want to kill the thing that killed Mom and Jess no matter what. And Dean wants to protect family. He's like, no, it's not no matter what. It's no matter what except family.
Because if I lose you, what was the point? I've lost Mary, we've lost Jess, and now I've also lost you. And that's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that like that argument of kind of like do the job no matter what, or do the job no matter what except for family is very recurring in the show. And that's really really explored in the finale of season 1. And that kind of fight between Dean and Sam kind of flip their positions on it throughout the series.
Yeah.
But that fight is continual of like, what is worth sacrificing for this job that we do?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is really the big question that comes to the head at the end of this season.
Yeah.
Is what choice are they going to make? So today on this recap episode, we're just going to be talking about some of our favorite moments from this season, some of our favorite episodes, some highs and lows, and assigning some awards for some characters throughout this season. We'll start with, I want to start with a high and a low of the season in terms of episodes. Yeah. And why?
Well, I think the worst episode of the season is definitely Bugs.
Oh, definitely.
So bad that we skipped it.
The one episode we've skipped all season, and probably one of the only ones, at least for a while, one of the only episodes we will legitimately not talk about.
It's just not worth talking about. It's such a bad plot, and it's racist and just terrible in every way.
Yes. What's your high episode of this season?
The high episode is really hard for me. I feel like season 1 is one of the seasons that has the most amount of good like one-off episodes.
Yeah, I forgot honestly until this rewatch, because there's certain episodes that I go back to all the time in my rewatches, or even just in general when I want to watch Supernatural. Like I go back to 2 or 3 season 1 episodes, but watching the whole season front to back made me remember how few duds there are in this season.
Yeah, like I'm just looking at the list. Home, Faith, Route 666, Something Wicked, Provenance. Those are all like some of my favorite episodes.
How about maybe I'll refine this category slightly more. A high of the season, like a high episode of the season in terms of character, a high in terms of plot, and a high in terms of pure like fun enjoyment.
Okay. I think I'm just going to maintain high for characters, Faith.
Yeah.
I think that we've explained that in depth already. And yeah, just exploring Dean and Sam both in that episode. I think that's the high for exploring their characters.
Mm-hmm.
For plot, I might say something wicked, or home, I guess. I'm thinking of like ones with flashbacks and just like developing their past.
Yeah. Which is a great way to look at plot too, because this season also does a lot of backwards plot where it goes into the past.
I guess I'll say the high for plot is something wicked, because it goes back into their past for the first time, really digging into like what their relational dynamics were as kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With their dad and with each other, and what their relationship has been with hunting since they were little. And I think it just like develops the plot really well. And that's the moment I remember that I started to understand, like, okay, this is where these people come from. This is why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like it just fills in a lot of the gaps, I think. Do you have a high for plot?
Yeah, I'll do my high for character first and then my high for plot.
Okay.
I think my high, I'm going to choose different ones than you chose, even though I 100% agree with the ones that you chose. So my high for character is going to be actually Route 666, because it is giving us a different angle on the brothers for the first time in the season. We get Dean and a past relationship, so we get some idea of the more recent history of his character, and we also get Sam interacting in a different way with his brother than we've seen prior to this. We get Sam a little bit more taking charge. We get just some really fun dynamics between the two of them, and the way they understand each other and the way they just sort of intuitively get each other. And so I think that's a huge high in terms of character. In terms of plot, episode 21, Salvation, because it introduces us to really an exploration of the cult, of demons, of it's kind of expanding the lore on this season. It's going, this is how big this story is. We get to see that whatever has happened in the past, whatever happened when Mary and Jess died, whatever happened to Sam that's given him these powers, it's bigger than the boys have any idea. And we start to get the idea that this is not going to end with just them killing this demon. That there's some mysteries that are still yet to unfold. And I think that episode really brings that to a head. And it also brings to a head the combination of the plot and the characters, with Sam and John's tensions, Dean and John's tensions. We start to actually see them flesh out. Like, we've talked a lot about how this season's plot line is basically find dad and then find the demon. Salvation actually shows us the dad in the way that we've been like getting glimpses of him and information. We get information about him all season. It's really only in the last 3 episodes that we get to know and actually experience what John is like. I don't know if you have a episode that was really fun that you were not expecting. For me, that episode is actually Hell House, which is the first episode with the Ghost Facers. I had forgotten how just dang funny this episode is. Mm-hmm. I'd forgotten how well it gives us an opportunity to see the boys being playful and being childish. The lore in that episode is really interesting. The way it's playing off of horror tropes is really fun. And it's an episode that is like, it's the one really light episode of the whole season. And I just like thoroughly enjoyed it as a little bit of a break. Like, it's episode 17. It's right before the plot starts ramping back up. Like, we get it right after Shadow and right before Something Wicked. It's a light episode in the middle of a bunch of heavy ones. And I think it does its job really well of giving us the reprieve that we need before the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think one that I've always found fun is actually Providence, because of Sarah.
Oh yeah.
I think that dynamic is just fun, like between her and Sam. and Dean teasing him about it too. And
it's got some really funny moments.
It's got some really funny moments and some light moments. And the monster is creepy in it, but kind of in a funny way almost.
It's almost a little hokey, like
yeah,
it is because of the way they do it visually.
Yeah. And so, and just like, I don't know, it's not that threatening. It's like, it's a painting.
Yeah. And they fought worse in terms of like Bloody Mary with the mirrors, which is similar in the sense that it's like also like a visual kind of monster that comes out of something. Bloody Mary is terrifying. Providence is a little more goofy.
Yeah. Even like the like climax of the episode with, you know, burning the doll's hair and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I just, it's just funny.
It is funny. And that episode is like chock full of like pop culture references. It's the first time they wear suits and complain about it. They have that weird like scene where they're like breaking in to like heist music. Like, it's just like a fun,
that
to be fun.
That heist scene is fun. And I also know that they had fun shooting it because there's a lot of bloopers from that episode. And so that also makes it more fun for me to watch because I know that they were laughing their way through it.
Oh yeah, you know, this is not a serious episode where they had to pull from like their emotional reserves as actors. They just like got to dick around and have a good time.
Yeah.
That's a good. I hadn't thought of that one as a like just fun one, but it really is. So next we're going to just touch a little bit on some of the biggest themes from this season, things that really stood out to us now that we've gotten to the end of this season, where we've really enjoyed exploring themes of family structures. We've talked about gender a lot. We've talked about choice a lot. We've talked about revenge a lot. So my question for you, Rani, in terms of themes from this season is there anything that has really stood out to you as a new thing that you've really appreciated from the show now that we've watched the whole season through, or themes that you think are more important than maybe you'd anticipated, or just any like new observations as we're thinking about this show through. We've been talking about it through themes every week.
Season 1 is one of my favorite seasons, I think, just because it sets the tone for the show. I don't know about new observations. That's a really good question. I think it's just fun to go back to the beginning of the show and find the themes that are so big throughout the rest of the show in the first few episodes. I think, like, you know, brotherhood. I think identity is always one that's really fascinated me about this show. Just like, you know, being a hunter as your identity, being a killer as your identity, being a brother, being a son, being, you know, a friend, I guess, being a hero or being a villain. Like, I just think all of those identity things are so interesting to explore in this show. And they do explore that really well in the first season. And the boys are wrestling with, like, who am I? What is my character? Like, what is my, I guess, purpose?
Yeah.
You know, because with Sam, it's like all the ideas of, like, you know, he leaves school and he originally he wants to go back to school and then he decides not to. And so then he's the younger brother again, and he's the hunter again, and he's the kind of problematic son. And you know, with Dean, like, he's been on his own for so long, and now he's got a teammate again, and family is so important to him, but he's always wrestling with, like, am I a good person or not? And I think that is a really relatable question that we all ask ourselves all the time. And I really like, I think that is one thing that I've noticed on this rewatch is that theme of identity.
I love that. And I want to jump off of that too, to say, like, we've talked in a lot of episodes about roles, like both the roles that fit you naturally, both the roles that like fit these characters naturally and the roles that don't fit them, and them subverting roles, whether it's in terms of gender or it's in terms of family structure or it's in terms of the way they relate to John, the way they relate to people that they're saving, the way they relate to people that they're hunting. We get this whole thing of them playing with these different roles and identities and subverting these different roles and identities. And I like what you said about, you know, for Sam, he is coming out of leaving school. He's entirely starting over again. And this is not the first time he's done that. You know, he started over. He set a new identity for himself when he left to go to school. He was like, I'm no longer the hunter, younger brother, you know, angry, rebellious son. I'm now, you know, the college student. I'm now the normal kid. I'm now, you know, in a lot of ways alone. And now he's not that anymore, but he's also not what he used to be as a child. And so he's forging this new identity. And with Sam, in terms of identity, now he has all these powers that he doesn't know about and he doesn't know why he has. And so he's going, he's having to ask those questions, and he's asking the questions about, you know, identity. You know, when we think about identity is always often so tied to like, what's my goal? What's my mission? What do I, you know, my identity drives what I think my purpose is. And for Sam, so much of the season is him going, is my purpose revenge? Is my purpose getting back to a normal life? Is my purpose being with my brother? Is it being a hunter? And the end of season 1 is him kind of culminating in choosing the family and choosing that that's his purpose, that's his priority. But he's got to do that wrestling all through the season, and he's going to continue to into season 2. And I love that. And for Dean, you know, the role of the good little soldier, the role of, you know, the obedient son, but also the role of the like protective brother. And then, you know, in episodes with like Cassie, the role of an identity of, you know, a young man who doesn't have a lot of friends, who hasn't been able to be vulnerable with people, who is connecting with people for the first time. Like there's so many identities, and Dean particularly, we see him try on identities and use identities, like play with gender and presentation and all these things in order to get things that he wants or avoid things that he doesn't want. And yeah, I love the idea of identity and role in this season as just a huge theme that traces all through it. So what we're going to do next is we are going to give away some season awards to characters that have caught our attention in a few different categories. So the rules for this are going to be that characters can win more than one award. So if it makes sense for them to win more than one, they can win more than one. But we will try and spread out these awards. We will, unless otherwise stated, it can be any character. It is not limited to side characters, and it's not limited to main characters. Unless otherwise stated, some of these awards will only apply to side characters or main characters. The only other rule for this is we are both going to nominate a character. If we nominate the same character, they automatically win. If we nominate different characters, we will discuss which one we think really deserves it.
Cool.
So for our first award is going to be for the best one-off character. This is a character that appears in one singular episode.
I'm nominating Layla. I think she is the best one-off because she has such an important role in Dean's larger plot line and character arc, but she's only in that one episode. But she really alters the course of his mindset, I think. Mm-hmm. She teaches him a lot about faith, and she teaches him a lot about purpose and the value of life, I think.
Yeah. I like that.
And I don't know, I just like her.
That's great. Well, my nomination is going to be really, it's not going to be the same character, but it is going to be for some similar reasons, because my nomination is actually Cassie Robinson from Route 666. And the rationale for that again, being the significant role that she plays in Dean's development in this season. It's the first time we really see him be vulnerable. It's the time we see a glimpse into what he can be in a relationship. Yeah, she's his one significant pre-series relationship, and gives us a glimpse into him in a way that we don't see in the rest of the season.
Totally.
I think though that you I mean, we're choosing between.
Okay, here's the thing. The next award on the list is Best Female Character. And I think that Layla and Cassie are also the 2 nominations for that one.
Yeah. So I think we should give this one to Layla.
Okay, best one-off to Layla, best female to Cassie.
Yes, I think so. So we won't even, yeah, okay. So we're gonna give best one-off character to Layla. And I think the reason that actually makes the most sense is because, like you said, the things she brings up for Dean are the themes that are gonna track through the rest of the show. Not that Cassie doesn't also do that, but especially around themes of like faith and purpose and worthiness and like salvation. Layla is asking those questions of Dean and like forcing him into those kind of thinking about those questions for himself. And that is, makes her, I think, the best one-off character. And then, yes, our second award is going to be for best female character. And because we have the same 2 nominations, this one we're going to give to Cassie.
Yeah.
She is, and just to elaborate on why we're going to give that to Cassie, she is, Hannah and I talked a little bit in a couple of our recent episodes about how unfortunate it is that so many of the female characters are very one-dimensional in this show, especially the one-offs. They exist to be, the kind of the trope of the Madonna or the whore. They're not super well personified, and they exist only in relation to the male characters. Yep. Cassie, yes, she exists in this relationship, like in this episode, so much in her relationship to Dean. However, Cassie, when we first meet her, she gets scenes on her own. She gets scenes that are independent of her relationship with Dean. We get a vivid picture of who she is as a person. And the episode even ends with her, not with her pining, not with her oohing and ahhing over Dean, but with her standing on her own 2 feet, moving forward into the next stage of her life. And that's more than pretty much any female character gets in this season, other than maybe Missouri. Our next award is going to be for funniest character.
The only one I can think of is the Ghost Facers, and I honestly forget their names right now.
Ed and Harry?
Yes. Okay.
Ed and Harry.
I think their stuff is just funny, and it brings out the comedy in the boys too.
Yeah. So my counter nomination to that is actually going to be Dean, because of, largely in that episode, but like the cracking jokes, the pop culture references, the, I built it myself, it's homemade. The like vampires, I can't believe vampires are real. Like, there's just like all like this is the undercurrent of humor in this season is largely it's entirely Dean. Sam is a little bit funny at times, but largely really. It's Dean.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you on that. I think we can give it to Dean.
Okay.
Because overall in the season, he's definitely the funniest, and he carries the comedy throughout the season and the show. And that's one of his really valuable like contributions to the show, I think.
Our next award is going to be for the scariest character / monster in this season.
Okay.
I think my nomination for this is the shapeshifter from Skin, because the conversation between the shapeshifter and the female Becky in front of the fireplace when he's in Dean's body, and like the really kind of creepy conversation that they have about being loved and being wanted and being needed is just like disturbing, because it's like this shifter is playing at some of these human desires, but in this really twisted way. And that, I think, is what makes him the scariest monster this season.
My nomination is the family from the Benders episode.
Okay.
I find them like honestly one of the creepiest villains in the whole show, even though they're human. And I think Dean says it in the episode where he's like, "Ugh, humans are always worse than the monsters."
Yeah, he says monsters. He says monsters I get. Humans are crazy.
Yeah. Thank you for that quote. Yeah. So, and I agree with him. I think like the fact that humans are hunting for sport, hunting other humans for sport is the most like disgusting and terrifying thing. And that episode has always been one of the scariest episodes for me because of that.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think we can give this to the Benders because, and as we think forward in the show as well, like they're the first human monsters in this show, but they won't be the last. They're not even really the last in this season of like people who have become twisted. And even in terms of like when we think of the main characters, as they make choices, we're going to see them also have to wrestle with what choices make me what choices make me more human in the good ways, and what choices make me more monster. And the Benders are like a good mirror to that, because at this point, Sam and Dean are just like so appalled by like there's such a big gap. But that is going to get murkier.
Yeah, totally.
Some runners up for this award though would definitely be the shapeshift from Skin, but also Bloody Mary. Just in terms of like that, I think is the scariest episode, even if it's not the scariest monster.
I agree.
And the Striga from Something Wicked, because a thing that sucks life force from children is just like highly creepy.
Totally.
Our next award is going to be Best Older Character. This is going to be a character that is above the age of 45. That's the only criteria for this award.
Yeah, and I think we agree on who it is.
Yes. Why don't you just say, because we when we talked about this a little earlier, we created this category with this character in mind. And then we talked about a couple other options of who could win it, and then came back to this original character. So we'll let you deliver that, Rennie.
Yeah, so we think that the best older character in season 1 is Missouri Mosley from Home. She is, I just love her. I think she's just like such a loving, nurturing character. And she brings that kind of peaceful assurance that is such a rare feeling on this show.
She's maternal.
And for the boys, she's maternal. Yeah. For the boys, like they never get that feeling, and they get to feel taken care of by her and reassured by her
and seen by her.
Yeah.
Because literally because of her psychic abilities, but also just because of her caring nature.
Yeah. She cares about them and loves them. And even though she doesn't really know them, she still, is very generous and loving towards them. So she is, and towards that family in that episode too, she's just so sweet and helpful and really caring. And I think that she reaches people in a way that not a lot of characters on this show do.
Because she's like she's psychic, but she's also just so very human, and you get the impression that the way that she always operates is human first, psychic second. Like her psychic abilities enhance her ability to be human in the kindest way, not the other way around, and that's really, really lovely. So following up with Best Older Character, our next award is going to go to our most unlikable character in this season,
which I do think we'll both agree on is John. Correct?
I think we're gonna give this one to John. I mean, he was gonna win an award. It was never going to be a great award. I think we've had, I mean, this comes up in almost every episode. Any episode John has mentioned, we've ended up talking about John's impact across this season. And John's really interesting, but he's also quite unlikable. Like the way we don't meet him until almost like 3/4 of the way through the season. We don't meet him in person, but every instance we get reference to him, we get this tension between Dean and Sam's perception of him. We get this sort of desperation on both their parts to find him. We get him ignoring their calls. We get him dodging them. We get him not showing up when they desperately need him. And then when we meet him, he's an ass. Like, he's not kind. He's not nice. He is pretty unlikable, even as he's really important to the story.
The fact that Dean knows that Yellow Eyes is not John, because he's too nice to him, just says a lot about John as a character and as a human. And and also I think the flashbacks show us how terrible John is as well. He really neglected his children and was abusive to them in that way.
And he was not liked by other hunters. Like, if this category is about the most unlikable character, like, he's pretty universally not liked by hunters, even hunters who trust him, even hunters who give him information, even hunters who help him. Nobody seems to really like him.
Even Bobby doesn't even like him, and they're good friends.
Yeah, or presumably were. Seems like most of his friends in this season. So
yeah,
there you go, John. That's the award you get this season.
You won an award.
Following up that award, we're going to do an award for the character with the most opportunity to change. This could be seen positively or negatively. This could be characters with the most opportunity for a positive arc, or the character with the most opportunity for a negative arc.
That's a cool award.
It's funny, I was actually thinking about John when I wrote this award, but I'm not sure that he is necessarily the one who's going to get it, because we actually see him pretty static across the whole season. We don't actually see John change.
Yeah.
We don't actually see much shift in him.
I think I'll nominate Sam.
Okay.
He's the first one I thought of when I saw that category. I think that Sam, because we start the season with him at school, and wanting to be a lawyer, I think he, becoming a hunter, becoming a brother again, but in a way that he never has been before, working as a team member with Dean and a partner, becoming a different kind of son to John, and like a different kind of man, I think, in relation to his father. Somebody who I guess finds what he has in common with his dad, but also stands up for himself and
also rejects it.
Yeah, exactly. And stands with Dean when it matters. I don't know. I think that he's, in the past, we know that he's kind of just been this rebellious, kind of hot-headed, like wanting to be normal really badly, rejecting his whole family and his history. And now throughout the season, we see him change a lot. And I think that gives him the opportunity to continue changing.
I like that. I agree with that. I don't have a character that I think fits that nearly as well as Sam.
Great. He gets it.
There you go. We've given away one award to each of the Winchesters at this point. It may not be the only one, but that's what we've done. So next award goes to the character we most like to see back. I'm talking more around one-off characters than recurring characters, but if they recurred only a couple of times, they could also be eligible for this award. And this is a personal one. I think this one, we're going to give this award ×2 if we have different ones, because this is personally, who would we like to see back the most?
Mine is Cassie.
Yeah, that's good. For obvious reasons. Yeah. Because you did Cassie, I'm actually going to take that opportunity to...
I just think that there could have been a lot done with her. And there could have been a lot done with her and Dean. And we talked about that in that episode. So if listeners want to know more about that, they can listen to that episode, because we talked about it at length. But yes, I definitely think that she has a lot of potential in the larger plot and in the character development of Dean.
Yeah. So because you've nominated Cassie, I am going to actually nominate Lucas from Dead in the Water, the child, because I think that would have also been a fascinating character. That would be a fascinating character to see come back. Dean has such a interesting connection with him. They both have interesting relationships to parental figures and to trauma. I would love to see them get to interact with Lucas in some way again, whether it's on another hunt, whether Lucas reaches out to them, even if it's a few years down the road and Lucas is older. I think that could be a fascinating character to see back. And I would love to see that dynamic of Dean with a child again, because it really is one of my favorite dynamics on the show.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Can I add something about Cassie?
Yes, add something about Cassie.
Because I've only explained like her value in terms of Dean, I also think that she's valuable on her own. She's a reporter, and
she could have brought so much. She could bring so much.
That would be so cool in the context of the show for them to have a reporter kind of on their team, helping them. Like, she knows how to investigate. She knows how to find information that people are trying to hide.
She has access to resources.
Yeah,
exactly. Than theirs.
She has probably contacts with people that could help. She could have been a connection point to a lot of other helpful people. I just think, and she's obviously a very interesting female character, which we lack on the show. And so I think she would add a lot of value if she came back.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So our next award goes to the one-off character we think is most likely to come back. The previous award was about the character we'd most like to see back ourselves. This one is about who we think, based on the plot, based on the writing, who do we think is likely to come back?
This isn't fully a one-off character, but I would say the Yellow-Eyed Demon is most likely to come back, because in the finale, we leave it with him leaving John's body, and then we don't know where he went. So that story isn't over. I think he's most likely to come back.
I don't think I have anything that can top that. I think that's absolutely who's most likely to come back. I don't think that story has been satisfyingly resolved, and we very clearly indicated that by the writing.
Yeah.
Next award is for the most tragic character of this season. My nomination for this is Max from Nightmare. Obviously, his entire story is tragic. He has powers that are unexplained. He experiences a ton of abuse and trauma, and he doesn't survive. And we get this mirror in this episode of Sam reflecting on his own experiences, their experiences with their dad, that though their experiences with John were terrible, it even compared to what Max went through alone, Max's story is just tragic.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I don't have a better nomination. I think that's definitely it.
Yeah. And I wanted to be able to talk about Max a little bit in somewhere in this recap, because it's a one-up episode that has a ton of implications for the next arc of the show. We're going to get to find out more about the link between Max's powers and Sam's powers. Those are unanswered questions at this point, but that's something that we're going to discuss a lot in season 2. We have 3 awards left. First off, we have the character with the most interesting arc. I'm going to nominate Sam for this one again, because I think that, kind of for some of the same reasons you talked about in the character with the most opportunity to change, Sam, we have all these mysteries. We have the mystery of, why is he so linked to Mary and Jess's deaths? Why does he have these powers? What even are these powers? And what is Sam going to do when they do if and when they actually manage to kill the Yellow-Eyed Demon? What happens then for Sam? Sam's indicated that he wants to go back to school. Sam's indicated that he doesn't want to be a hunter, but he's getting dragged further and further in. So I think his arc is going to be really interesting going forward. And then this season itself, his arc is like wild and all over the place. But I'd be interested to hear if you think of anyone else, with a really interesting arc.
I agree with you. I think that he has the only other person I would nominate would be Dean. But I think just because I always think Dean has interesting character stuff happening, but in season 1, for sure, it's Sam.
And I think Dean's is interesting because if we were talking about like plot arcs, I think Sam has the most interesting plot arc, but in terms of like emotional arc, they both, I think, have strong claims on an interesting emotional arc of how they're processing through family and choice and loyalty and revenge, and both of them are doing really interesting things with that. But yeah, I think for this one, Sam gets it.
Yeah, I agree.
So our next award is Best Hunter. We meet a number of hunters in this season. We meet the Winchesters, we meet Pastor Jim, we meet Bobby, we meet a couple of others as well.
I think at this point it's Dean. Because he's been doing it the longest, but he still has his humanity. John's been doing it a long time, but he does not have his humanity. And Sam hasn't been doing it for a very long time, so he's kind of getting his feet back with it, and you can see that happening in this season. Dean just has really strong instincts that are usually right, and
that's true. That's super true.
I also think that he knows how to read people and communicate with people on a level that they need. Like, I'm even thinking of like Wendigo at the very beginning when he's talking to that family, those siblings, like he just really understands them and knows how to talk to them, and like you know, he doesn't fight them on coming to look for their brother, because he knows that he would want to go if he were them. Like, I don't know, I just think he knows how to relate to the people that they're helping.
Yeah, he's really well-rounded as a hunter as well, for the fact that he's only 26. He's strategic, he has really good instincts, he's really good with even just the practical elements of the weapons that they use. He's got this wealth of information in his head, but also knows how to look for it in other places. He's really good socially to find information. He's like the best well-rounded hunter of this season for sure.
Yeah, I think so. He has John's journal memorized, basically.
Yeah, I mean, when I was going to, nominate Bobby as the other potential for this, but I think
totally.
Mainly because I think we see Bobby as a wealth of information, but we don't see him hunting. We see him sharing information and strategizing with the boys. We don't really get to see the extent of his hunting skills. I think in season 2, we're going to get to experience a bit more of Bobby, and we're going to get to see him as a bit more of a hunter. Right now, he's a hunter resource, but so I think you're right. I think this one goes to Dean.
But Bobby's a good shout out because he knows so much. He's totally a wealth of information.
Yeah.
And he teaches them some pretty basic things in this season that they will use the rest of the show.
Yes. Yeah. He's the most helpful resource that they have for sure.
Yeah.
So, runner up for that category.
Yeah.
And our last award is going to be for the MVP of the season. This one's gonna be a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a nomination. I think that I'd split it between Sam and Dean.
Yeah, I think honestly that one is going to be, I'm going to agree with you there, as anticlimactic as that is.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, Dean drives the emotional plot forward of this season, and Sam drives the practical, like the actual plot forward.
Mm-hmm.
So much of this season relies on the interplay between those two things, between the hunt for revenge and the search for John, and the Sam and Dean learning to be brothers again. So much of that, they're all wrapped up in each other, and both Sam and Dean have moments of being the best hunters in the room, of being the catalysts for saving people, hunting things like that. Yeah,
and I think the way the show is set up, they're definitely co-leads, and the story is centered around the two of them, and it can't happen without one of them.
And I was interested when we started doing this rewatch and doing this podcast, because we knowing the plot of season 1, knowing how much of it relies on the revenge plot for Sam, on his arc with his powers, and knowing that when this show was created, I think there was an emphasis on Sam's character arc and Sam's plot arc as really driving the show in this first season, particularly. And so I was interested to see, as we watched it, if it would feel like Sam is more of the main character. And I think in some ways the writing on its own might have done that, but the way it's acted, the nuance that Jensen brings to Dean's character, the subtle things they write in terms of the emotional arcs, like really makes them those co-leads I think this is why the show works so well in this first season.
And I think the chemistry they naturally have and the rapport that they have, you can tell as human beings, they really are on the same wavelength. And
they feel really authentically like brothers.
Yeah.
Even very early on in this, even by the second or third episode, they feel very authentically like brothers. Yeah. Which is like impressive. From both of them. So we'll give them both MVP of the season.
Yeah.
That concludes our awards ceremony for season 1 of Supernatural. Stay tuned. We will be doing this at the end of every season with these categories. So if you disagree with some of the awards that we gave out, send us a message or a voicemail and we'll have a lively debate about it. When we get to the end of season 2, maybe we'll take some of listener nominations as well for these awards.
Cool.
Going into our last segment for today's recap episode, what are we excited for going into season 2? Again, I've collected a few answers from a few different co-hosts about what we're looking forward to. What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, I'm really looking forward to when Seth and Denver get their father out of father Jeff out of the car, and
Seth and Denver.
That's their names, right?
Just gonna leave an uncomfortable silence there. I'm just gonna try to make quick crickets in there. Seth and Denver.
Yeah, Saul and David, right? I don't know. I think eventually someone will die in the show.
You think eventually someone will die in the show?
Yeah. I mean,
do you have a prediction for which episode? There are 22 episodes in the second season. When someone like significant to the show, like really significant, like is that what you mean by someone's gonna die? You think it's someone like if we're gonna have a significant character death, or did you just mean because like there's been death in basically every episode?
I think I'm sure Papa's gonna get unscathed for a whole nother season to because there's how many?
There's 15
seasons. So they have to really push the limits with this show, I'm sure. So stretch it out as much as humanly possible so that people get bored of it eventually, and then they have to bring everything back, and then they actually make it interesting again for the last couple seasons. And then they use the points of nostalgia to bring people back into it, and then they finally finish it. Did I get that right?
Actually, remarkably correct.
Yeah, it's almost like I know how TV works.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is going to happen. Yeah.
Well, stay tuned. You will see.
Perfect.
What are you excited for season 2? For what happens in the show? For our discussions? What are you looking forward to?
Sort of the evolution of the plot. I'm excited for it to start getting a little bit batshit.
Season 2 is great for plot. It's like the plot of season 1 is like real simple.
It is, and it's because, and I know you made this point fairly early on, very, very early on, but they have to get us invested in the brothers, in hunting, in the whole sort of basic premise. And that's how they lure us into there's something bigger happening. And now that we're there, right, we're sold. We're sold on Sam and Dean. We're sold on Sam and Dean. Mm-hmm. We're sold on however this is going to play out. We're in. So now they're like, okay, great. You understand the basic premise. There's so much more happening. And I love that. I'm excited for it.
So excited for it. So, Rennie, what are you looking forward to in season 2?
I made some notes about this last night that are kind of funny.
I'm excited.
Well, one of the things I wrote was Dean becoming less misogynistic and toxic masculinity and more of a whole person.
Yes, I'm excited for that as well.
I love that he is the adjective toxic masculinity.
Yeah. I'm excited that we are going to continue to have many conversations about Dean / gender.
Yep.
As many episodes as possible.
Yeah, he definitely, gender and Dean are very intertwined.
Mm-hmm. Always leaves us with lots to explore.
Yeah, and that continues throughout the series, and I think it's really interesting, and his character develops in a cool way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, knowing the plot, I think season 2 has really interesting, me, I love character stuff, and I think season 2 has really interesting character development for both brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And it really goes into those themes of identity actually, pretty deeply.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what season 2 is about. And there's, a lot of cool exploration of their relationship. And I guess like, what am I willing to sacrifice for family? That kind of question comes up a lot more. I like how they explore them understanding each other more and like how they experience the same childhood really differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it shapes them into who they are, and also becoming independent without their dad. And just because season 2 is less about dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that is a really interesting, they get to become more independent and they get to become more of their own people and more separate from him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then I think realizing the importance about not being single-minded about revenge also is really interesting. And they definitely explore that a lot in season 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things I'm most excited for is the end of season 1. We see kind of the culmination of their choices, leading to Sam having to make a choice between John and Dean, between this mission of revenge and this priority of family, and he chooses Dean. And so I'm interested to explore kind of the fallout of that in terms of their season 2 arc, especially with what we're going to see in the season 2 premiere and what we're going to see, information that's going to start to get revealed about Sam, about these powers, is going to really complicate the way that they relate to each other and the choices that they make. And I'm excited. Yeah, like I'm excited to see the plot get more complex, because season 1's plot is actually pretty simple. Season 2's plot is a lot more complicated. There's a lot more moving parts. There's a lot more lore, both about the hunting world and also about the supernatural world, and also about, the Winchesters and their family. And all of those things are really fun to watch unfold. And I'm excited to get to talk about them every week with y'all. Yeah.
And I one of the things I love about season 1 is how small the world is, but I also love that they grow the world.
Yes.
That they're
very natural progression.
And it's really cool how they do that, and that's a cool part of season 2.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think it is a really good progression, because season 1 we really need to focus on just the Winchesters, on just the basics of hunting, on just how do these characters interact with each other. And then in season 2 we're going to get more of them interacting with the larger world and them being a little more out of their element. And they've teased at that in season 1 with episodes on demons, with episodes on vampires, and season 2 we're really going to get to see them interact with a world that they know and don't know. And I'm excited. I'm also just excited for a lot of the characters that I know are coming in season 2. There's going to be some really cool relationships that are going to start to get explored, and some fairly significant characters that are going to be introduced, and I just cannot wait to talk about them. So that is going to conclude our show for today. Thank you so much to Rennie for joining me for our season 1 recap.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
To all of our listeners, thank you for coming along for the ride, and we wish you a peaceful road until we meet again. Next week, we will be kicking off season 2 by discussing season 2, episode 1, In My Time of Dying, through the theme of family. A note to our listeners. This episode was recorded prior to our season 3 name change, where we went from Driver Picks the Podcast to Saving People, Queering Things. For all of our new social media platforms, visit queeringthingspodcast.com.